Hello, everybody, and welcome to another day of English 1A. Today, we're going to continue working on our personal essays. So, if you go into the modules, you'll see that I have a couple things set up here for you already. And I'm going to add a little homework assignment that's going to be some reading, um, compare and contrast. So, it's here. I just haven't uploaded the file yet. So by the time you see this video, it should be totally uploaded. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do today is do some expansion on our personal essay, which again is a response to one of those Common App prompts. Feel free to follow along on your Canvas as I go over this. So my goal for you is to make sure that you have 350 words that are rich with content, meaning, and evocative description by the end of period today. So that might mean that you want to do some editing, or you want to, add in some more things. You may have a pretty good overview of the prompt, but maybe you need to add some more details. So that's why we call this expansion, because you're sort of building on the original ideas that you started out with. So I'm going to give you just some general kind of overview of what this means and then what you should be working on today. So your writing, it should be bursting with meaning that you wish to apply to the prompt. So don't just try to answer the prompt with one example or the initial sort of impulse that you have. Try to just really talk about it in as deep and as varied ways that you possibly can. Um, define for yourself and your reader what really matters and why. Okay, so with regards to that prompt, don't leave it up to guesswork to your reader. Really define what matters and why. You might want to be taking down some notes about what I'm saying, because these are the things that you're going to want to do to get a good grade on this as well, just so that when you go to do a personal essay, to do something like this for college application, these are the insights that are going to make the difference between having a decent essay and having something that's really effective. So when you are asked something, right, like you're asked about a key pivotal moment in your life, or you're asked about a belief that you have that you challenged, or you're asked about an activity that really you've become so absorbed in, you really need to define for your reader what that is. And when I say definition, it's not just put it clearly so they know what you're talking about. It's really evoke or render your specific response, your idea. And that's what makes this writing process both creative and personal. So let me go into it a little bit more in detail and see if it makes more sense. In a personal essay, it's important to communicate your voice, what makes you different and unique. In other words, you want to communicate what is singularly you. There are a variety of ways to do this, but one of the traditionally most successful ways to do this is to think about what defines you. And I would say in terms of the prompt, right? So what is the essence of you in response to this prompt? In terms of your response to the prompt, you might also consider what terms or conditions that you imply that might need further clarification or definition, so your reader gets as much of the meaning that you want to communicate as possible. All right. So that might start you thinking a little bit about revision, okay? But let's keep going. So we're going to do some activities for expansion that should help you with this. So I want you to read back through what you've written thus far. Circle or highlight all the abstract words that you cannot specifically identify in a concrete or tangible way, words that require an abstraction in order to visualize them. Here are some examples. freedom, liberty, fun, beauty, struggle, independence, education, pride, emotion, compete, win, succeed, live, and even love. Now, there's nothing wrong with those words, but they could mean different things to different people. It's not a concrete, specific description. So when someone reads that word, they're going to have an idea of it, and you're going to have an idea of it. For instance, if I said barbecue, and that's all I said, you're probably going to picture the barbecue that you're familiar with. But as we know, there's a lot of different kinds of barbecues. There's the green egg, there are pellet grills, there are open fire. I mean, there's thousands of different types of barbecues, right? But you're probably going to picture the one that you're familiar with. And so when I say that it requires an abstraction, what I mean by that is somebody is going to take that concept that you wrote, and they're going to have to abstract from it, um, and picture their own version of it, or try to suspend their own sort of thought and just imagine what you're trying to say. But you're not necessarily giving them enough information to do that easily or successfully. We all walk around with a lot of conditioning in terms of language, because that's how our brain compartmentalizes and sorts things so that we have access to meaning. I mean, imagine if you had to learn the meaning of every word again for the first time every time you heard it. It would not be very efficient in terms of working through life. Okay. But the thing is, when you're a writer, you want to communicate specific meaning based on your vision, your story, your voice, your experience. And so that's where it's really important to recognize where maybe you're making some abstractions that you need to specify with more concrete details so that your reader has an easier time visualizing what it is you're trying to say. And for a personal essay like this, it's visualizing who and what you are all about, is really where it's all going. So, like I said, there's nothing wrong with those words. However, depending on the context and how they're used, it can be very hard to visualize them exactly as you, the writer, might. Freedom means different things to different people. So does success and even love. So your task is to find words, especially nouns. So when these things are used as nouns, they can be pretty vague. So then it's your job to find those things that you talk about in your paper where you substitute a word like that for an abstract feeling or idea. And you need to spend time in the expansion, the body of your personal essay, defining those terms. There is a creative writing component to this because it's important for your reader to see things how you want them to. So they need specifics to guide their vision. It has been said that if somebody can't picture something or understand it, it is not good writing. Typically, when we write about our lives, we take the liberty of making it somewhat general. I made the team. I went to the lake. We had to move. I fell in love. I started a new job. Grades are important. All of these phrases can represent significant things to the writer, but can represent different things to the reader. What team? What lake? Why and where? With whom? So when you circle all these abstract words, I want you to really think about what you need to add more sensory details to, and also what you want to define for the project of responding to this prompt. Try to add more sensory details, more specific textures, rhythms, sounds, tensions, and smells to your writing. Uh, Even though like a smell isn't probably that pertinent to the theme of what it is you're trying to say, a smell is a very powerful sensory evocation, and actually good writers use scents a lot. Try to be as vivid and descriptive as possible in your short bursts of pure imagery. to get the reader to fully enter into your vision of what happened and how you felt and why it mattered. Lastly, consider what things an otherwise typical reader would need to know intimately beyond just a cursory level to really get to the meaning of what it is you're saying. Ask yourself, what things need further definition, and what is the singular thing I'm defining to answer this prompt? Make sure you creatively describe and render those feelings, emotions, and powerful elements to communicate not only the meaning of your response to the prompt, but your singular voice and understanding of the world in doing so. Make your essay not just about responding to the prompt, conveying the conditions of the world you live in, but define what matters while you respond. Define what a team is, what a powerful relationship can be, how an idea grows and shimmers and changes with you. Define things as you see them in your singular vision. This is what a personal essay asks you to do. So basically, I want you to start by finding those kind of abstract moments where you sort of rely on pre-programming, like, oh, I believe in happiness. Okay, well that's fine. It means different things to different people. It's also kind of an abstract term. Then I want you to go in and really sort of take a look at what you've written and the prompt and ask yourself, what am I defining here? Because the reader of this essay wants to know your vision, what it is that you're trying to say about the world. So, do you need to define what a team is? Do you need to really talk about what makes your experience different? And maybe instead of telling them that, you show them that. You describe the texture of, I don't know, the floor in the house that you used to live in. Maybe it has cuts in it, or it has stains on it from something bad that happened. And now you're in a different place and you describe that. But the point is, you have to really consider what it is you're trying to say and be as descriptive as possible in certain moments to help the reader see it and picture it. Because if they can see it and picture it, they're going to be more likely to understand it. And again, the it here is you. It's you on a page. Yeah, there's a prompt. Yeah, there's a topic. But what we really want to communicate beyond all the abstractions, beyond all the cultural signals, right? Like, signals are words that we identify with things. We want to really understand what you are and how you make sense of the world, your vision, because that's ultimately what, when they're reading this essay, what they're going to try to take from it. Okay, so this is your chance to practice sort of pushing through to that next level of description and trying to really make a piece that's just bursting with meaning, so that the reader is really going to be blown away by you, your voice, and your vision. So we're going to take some time now and write. You should have 350 words of really rich, strong prose by the end of this class. We will do a few other little activities, but right now I want you to take about 20 minutes, go through, do this activity, and then spend some time writing, describing, and rendering these really, really potent images as necessary in your piece. Okay, everybody. So hopefully you had a chance to find some abstract parts of your writing and highlight it or circle it and then add on. So what I would like for you to do now is um, basically submit a link to what you're working on. I want you to continue writing and developing this. So I don't want you to submit like a PDF where it's frozen. So you're going to use this form to submit your link. And here's an example that I did. And so what I want you to do is highlight your abstraction words in yellow, and then expansion writing that you did to make it more evocative, descriptive, imagistic, or understandable to the reader. Um, So I took my thing that I had started on for the outline, and I highlighted some words that I thought were kind of abstract that probably needed a little bit more description. And I'm not writing a Common App essay, even though I kind of am, but I added this additional part. And so I put it all in blue because it was a response to this kind of it was basically giving a more detailed description of what I was talking about here. And this is a fine technique. If you have some abstract words early on and then you provide like a really specific scene or part of your paper that really, provides more detail, what you can do is it kind of clarifies for your reader those things that maybe you need to clarify, right? So I guess what I'm saying is right here, I highlighted let's see here. And then I highlighted this word, and I didn't want to necessarily stop what I was writing and put an image in there because it didn't make sense. So I thought, well, I'll just write a new section where maybe I could kind of tell the story a little bit more in a detailed way, right? So I'm writing about this conversation I had with a friend about whether or not she should have a child before finishing her PhD, and she kind of called me out for having privilege and supporting a power structure that had basically been pretty I guess you would say racist towards black women, especially in academia, that by suggesting she had to choose between her career and a child, that it was actually perpetuating this unjust sort of way of life. So I wanted to clarify that because those are all pretty abstract concepts. So I said, she led me to understand that traditional systems of prestige and influence in our country have been created by and continue to privilege those who are in power. Academia is no different. Thus, by suggesting that something as noble as teaching, despite its luster, while still serving that system, represents a sort of hegemony for women of color, especially when they are forced to choose between having a child or completing a PhD. I thought I was being open minded, supportive, and challenging those structures as we drove down Highway 99, discussing our futures, the faint aroma of dairies melding with the static fuzz of oldies radio. Instead, I was participating in a false choice fallacy, one that had harmed many women. She toppled the hierarchy I had built in my mind, reclaiming her own power to determine the course of her life, illustrating a new way to frame priorities, one centered around humanness, not careerism, offering me a new way to live. I wish I had listened more. Instead, the seed was planted and took years to germinate. Luckily, through introspection and humility, I've learned how wrong I was and how right she was. Not only have I learned that challenging a belief is hard but necessary, I've learned that admitting when one is wrong is always beneficial, no matter how much time has passed. So, I think it's important to note that anytime you write, you're going to do some sort of telling. You're not always going to be able to write in pure image, or you'll never get anywhere. But by building in some more specific, detailed interludes, it does, I think, help the reader to picture what's going on and the message you're trying to get across. If I kept it all in this sort of abstract language without going into more depth, it wouldn't be very meaningful to the reader. So the blue part here is what I added in expansion, and then I highlighted the terms that I thought were abstract that either I needed to change or add more of a definition or detail to, so that my reader could understand. So I want you to do that for what you have done, and then all you have to do to submit the link is hit share and get link, copy link, or you can just go up here and get it. And then you're going to go into here. You're going to put your name first, last, because I want to have it on a spreadsheet. So Finney, Adam, and then go ahead and submit. And so then I'll get a spreadsheet with all your links on it. Okay, so we're actually gonna push the compare and contrast to tomorrow, so it'll be homework over the weekend. I do want to look at one other thing though. So if you're struggling with expansion and how to make your writing better, I want to talk about something which we kind of hit on today, but and we'll talk about more tomorrow. But it's this idea of the modes of invention. And what the modes of invention are is going back thousands of years. It's ways that writers communicate meaning. And you can do this in a paragraph, you can do it in an entire paper, or you might be able to do it in a couple sentences, but it's probably going to be something that is a paragraph minimum. And what the modes are is they're just different ways to like get your meaning across. So one way to do it is to narrate and describe. A lot of you probably did that by telling the story about something that happened in your life. Another way to do that is to divide and classify. So maybe if you wanted to talk about the behaviors that you had that were really effective and those that weren't, and you learned how to divide and classify the two. Process analysis, kind of similar. It's where you go through a process and you arrange steps and you kind of describe your process. And you'll see for each of these modes, there are 5 pointers that you want to think about. Definition, we kind of loosely talked about today, which is sort of creating your own definition for something. And it's not simply putting something, putting a word out there like what it, this is what teamwork is. It's describing it and providing conceptual and in some cases visceral, like things that the reader can feel, like interpret on a very sensory level to help them really understand your vision. Okay. So it's a creative definition supported by details. Compare and contrast. We've all probably heard about this. It's easy to appreciate and hard to master, but it's where you're setting up a pattern to literally compare and contrast to unlike things. And cause and effect. This could be really helpful to get your point across. Um, Again, what are the events that led to something else? What is the cause, and then what happened? Argument and persuasion, we're going to talk about a lot this year, but it's where usually more on like a big picture level, you're trying to create a persuasive structure to like a lawyer, sort of put the best interpretation of something forward that you can. So these are things to consider in your own writing, even in creative writing. A personal essay like this, we're going to look at compare and contrast tomorrow. We looked at definition a little bit today. And we'll continue talking about these for a while and come back to them. So if you're interested in looking at samples of modes essays, these are from students from years past. It was not for this assignment. It was a totally different assignment, but you can at least see how they set it up and what they did. And I also have a teacher definition essay here that's pretty good that you can look at if you want to see a really good example of how somebody creates a definition of something. In this case, about why we need to encourage one another in life. And again, we will refer back to these and do some of these modes writing ourselves. But I just wanted to kind of put this out there for you because these are examples of ways to expand your idea by comparing it to something else, by trying to persuade an interpretation, by talking about cause and effect, by analyzing your process. Hopefully, you can see that maybe at least one of these or a combination of them could be helpful for you. So that's the final resource for today. There's no minimum requirement that you have to read them or anything, but it can be really helpful. And if you're stuck, you might ask yourself, well, what am I doing a lot of narrating? Well, maybe I need to analyze my process or I need to define something. that's kind of what I wanted you to get out of today, was defining things in a creative way so that the reader gets your singular vision, your voice. Because when you're doing this type of a college essay, it's like you have 2 minutes with the readers to put yourself out there for them to really understand who you are. Obviously, we're going to spend more time on it. I'm going to spend more time on it, but I just wanted to present that first. We're going to talk about compare and contrast tomorrow. Feel free to read ahead if you so choose. All right. Well, that's pretty much it for today. You should be developing your writing, and make sure you shared that link.